Welcome back to another episode of Sexy Marriage Radio. Currently coming to you live from the deep freeze, which doesn't happen a lot in Texas.
No, it's funny because even I've got a brother who moved down here, and he's laughing. This is his first year here, and he's like, Dallas gets a dusting and everything shuts down. But it's different. It's not a dusting.
It's 4 inches of sleet where we are, at least.
It's all sleet and ice.
It's not just a dusting of snow.
Yeah.
So it's a different beast, but it's still, we react differently here in the South when real cold comes versus compared to the people in the North that are like, you think that's cold? Let me show you the negative 700 Celsius.
We are definitely not nearly as attuned to the cold as those in Minnesota.
No, not at all. I mean, when it's in the double digits, when it's in the teens here in the overnights, that's really cold, but that's also called January.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but it's interesting because today we'll be talking about things that heat us up. How about that?
How about that?
Because conflict can definitely heat things up. And so where we're heading today is an email that came in from a listener, and they sent that to feedback@sexymarriageradio.com. And so we're going to dive through his questions about some conflict that happens in their family. Mm-hmm. And then in the extended content, we're going to go into building off of the 4 points of balance, which we've talked about before, which is some of Schnarch's concepts of just having a full frame of all of us as a life, right? Of the 4 different aspects of us that when we can shore those up, we just live a better life. And we'll use those 4 points specifically as it pertains to this email as a way to what can each party do to shore up their side of the equation. So let's just jump to the email. It says, my wife and I are both small business owners. We're Christians and we're parents of 3 boys. Our oldest has significant physical needs and ADHD, but there's no developmental delays. And as you can imagine, conflict pops up, especially around school. We homeschool with co-op and some dual enrollment. Our youngest 2 have typical school resistance, while our oldest is much more aggressive, which causes friction between both of us. So here's my struggle after 20 plus years of marriage. My wife has become increasingly averse to conflict. She understands it's sometimes necessary, but even when the issue doesn't involve her directly, my engaging in a conflict can drain her. If she's actively part of the conversation, it gets so bad that she often won't even stay in the room. I'm not looking for knockdown, drag-out fights, just a way to handle necessary confrontation, like character standards follow through, without it wrecking her mental game or spilling over into our relationship, including our sex life. Do you have any recommendations, like books, podcasts, or other resources besides yours, that could help us tolerate conflict better and help me lead these moments more clearly at home and elsewhere? Thanks for all you do. Your focus on both sexual and overall relational growth has really helped keep me listening. So appreciate the reaching out and asking some questions about an all too common aspect of marriage and family, or conflict.
How to deal with it.
Because it's a reality.
Yeah. And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, most of his question is about how his wife deals with conflict as opposed to how he should deal with it. So a little bit harder for him to do anything there.
Absolutely. And it's an all too common thing we do where how can I help the person that is causing the issue with me rather than me? And
it's okay. So here's what I heard within there too, as you're trying to flesh this out and help them, maybe look at it in a different way. He said that her issue with dealing with conflict, wants to keep it from spilling over into their relationship. So it doesn't sound like it's a conflict between the 2 of them. It sounds like it's a conflict with others, like with the kids. I mean, Absolutely. They're telling us about they're both small business owners. So that's an issue, how to deal with the kids. And I think that matters. And is it one-on-one? The 2 of us are really having an issue about something? Or is it we're dealing with something outside of us?
Well, that's the complexity of systems. That a conflict between me and another source that's not you, that's outside of us as a marital couple, will spill over into us as a marital couple.
Yes.
Because it's so much more complex than just how come we can't just keep that at work? Well, because I am someone who is a part of that work environment, and I will bring it home because I'm in that work environment and a home environment. And then when you bring into it the equation kids, we each relate to kids differently. A mom's going to relate to a kid differently than a father will. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're dealing with boys, right? Because there's something about mothers and sons. There's something about fathers and sons that are just different.
Well, not only do you relate to them different, but you can have different viewpoints of how to raise them or how to deal with the issues that come up with it. So yes, this will spill over to the two of you.
Right. And so here's to kind of frame this, it's worth noting that conflict is not the pathology here. There's no issue. There's nothing going wrong here. There's nothing. It's not a verdict. It's not an indictment on the state of your marriage or the state of your family, because all couples, all families have conflict. Every single one of them.
And I'm not sure he thinks that conflict is an issue.
Well, but it's the way, it's almost like I hear him asking for, how do I make this go away so it doesn't impact the other parts of my life? And this is where recognizing how we use conflict badly is the problem.
Okay.
Right. And so it's realizing that if you can see it as conflict that you can actually use and orient towards will stabilize long-term love, because it stabilizes the people involved in facing that conflict, because it is an inevitability of life. I think of the verse in James.
Yeah.
Consider it joy when you go through struggles. Meaning trials, you're going to go through trials and struggles. And if you don't believe us, have children. You will go through struggle. Right? Because it just is an inevitability. And if you can see it as, because I think what we often do is we articulate what goes on as something's broken rather than, no, it's not. And the way he wants her to orient towards these dilemmas like he does, and she just doesn't. She even goes so far on the other end of the extreme compared to him, it sounds like, of she'll just totally disconnect and leave from those moments, which again, if you got somebody that like, I want to deal with this, that's going to really get underneath their skin on a deeper level, which will then intensify the issue that can feel like it's now between us.
Yeah. He's ready to hit it head on.
Right.
And that's not her style.
My hunch is they might both, or he might, have this idea of a belief that these conflicts are things we can solve. And I'm going to propose we rarely actually solve conflict. We just get it to a more tolerable level on the tension between us. So I don't take it so personal on how a kid may act. Or sure, there's still an issue of we won't see things eye to eye, but we get to where it's close enough aligned that it doesn't wreak havoc between us anymore. It's just like, okay, because we can focus more on the bigger things instead of the little nuance of how we get to those bigger things. Or, so there's a lot, and here's a couple, he asked for some recommendations that can help. Okay. Any books, podcasts, etc. A couple things that come to my mind right off the bat. This is more systemic on just dealing with the system within children, with not necessarily specifically conflict. And so just to be clear for the listeners, one is a book from Hal Runkle called Scream-Free Parenting, which is an exceptional book because it's based on through the lens of differentiation, which is the idea of how do I handle myself better in the midst of the situations I find myself in, rather than how do I address the situations. He's an LMFT, the guy that wrote it, and it has that mindset of
LMFT, licensed marriage
family therapist. Yes,
thank you. Yes,
that what's being exposed in me, and how I need to be better at recognizing that what's being exposed in me is a natural, normal human emotions or tensions or frustrations or whatever, but I need to deal with those, or they'll wreak havoc on the situation more than I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And I love it because one of his best stories in the book is they had when their little sons was young, they had moved into this big colonial sounding house. They live in the South, and one day he comes out of his office, which sounds like it's at the front of the house, and it's a grand entry with a staircase going up the front,
Sure.
right when you walk in the door. And the son is walking up the stairs on the outside of the banister on that little 2 or 3 inch wide ledge. And by the time Hal comes around the corner and sees the son, he's like 6, 8 feet up. And at this point, he's like 3 or 4, right? Well, Hal recognizes a normal reaction is going to be, you'll get startled by it. Well, his startled could startle the kid who would fall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's fueling the startle is care, compassion, as well as fear and uncertainty. That's where it's all complexities that happen in this thing. And we don't often slow down to recognize. And so what he actually did was he caught himself and just did hey, buddy, what's going on up there? How about let's get on down from there? And as he's grabbing him, slowly, he's just kept himself kind of even keel and addressed the situation, and then let his emotions be felt more.
Yeah, and his calmness allowed the kid to not overreact by, oh my gosh, dad's mad, I got to let go.
Or think I did something completely wrong or whatever. I did something maybe unsafe. But again, this compares to how people see the raising of boys, because someone would be like, absolutely, keep climbing. Let's see how far you can get. And they would just kind of sit back and just watch. And well, if you fall, that's what you get. There's so many different
Here's a mattress. I'll stick it on the floor for you.
But that's one of the books as they get a little bit older into the teenage world, a book called Feeding the Mouth That Bites You.
Yeah, Ken Wilgus.
Which was one of our go-to books. We read multiple times. Ken's a colleague friend of mine too that has been developed over the years, but it's a fantastic book on how do I let the situation be the bad guy, not as much me being the bad guy. He just has a whole concept of planned emancipation that we're working towards helping kids launch.
Yeah.
And so you start that when they're in the teenage world.
They want their independence and they want to see how you're helping them get there.
So you give it to them earlier than most of us think. And I don't mean in the sense of, oh, good luck to you, see ya, and you kick them out at 8.
No.
But it's just it's a framework just to look at things. And then the last one, this is another one we use, which is Love and Logic. And it's the same kind of concept of how do I let situations and consequences be the bad guy, not me have to be the bad guy.
Yeah, a lot of school systems use this for training with their teachers on how to do it.
And in their situation, when they're homeschooling, that means they have to figure out a way to be teacher and parent.
Hard stuff.
And some of the people I know that have done homeschooling, good on them for using the co-ops and some dual enrollments and some things that gets them some breaks and some opportunities to have their kids exposed to other things. But one of the best things I've heard from homeschool parents is have a dedicated classroom if possible, in your house. So that's where schoolwork goes on. And so while you're there, you're teacher, you're not mom or dad. And so it's just a way to kind of keep a cleaner line. It's like what we do if we work from home. And you can have an element of I'm at my office right now. And I can be more in that mode. And then because we need to be able to split ourselves some so that we can be all we are in those moments, but also realize it still will spill over into the other areas of life, which is what he's trying to figure out to have not happen. Right? It's how do we keep these conflicts from not spilling over? And so a lot of it then is just going to come down to whoever between the two of them in these different moments that they face with their kids, because they're going to instigate things. That's just what kids do. Situations are going to instigate things because that's what life does. But in anxious systems, in anxious families, and in anxious moments, the person with the clearest stance and calmest presence will lead it.
And great, maybe it's him most of the time.
Right.
And take that role and use it well. But then if he's frustrated with her for not participating.
And that's what he needs to recognize is how is his hope for how she would do these things actually impacting the situation, which is in further exacerbating the situation. Because let me tell you something, kids, we've had experience with this with an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old in our household. Kids are the best lawyers money can buy. They can read situations exceptionally well. Whether they acknowledge that or not, they can. They're really good mind mappers. right? They're constantly working.
So what's the point behind that? What are you trying to say?
If I see a scenario that plays out in this home of they can have a situation with their oldest trying to do schoolwork, and the oldest turns a little assertive or aggressive or belligerent or defiant to whoever it is that's the teacher in the moment, because I don't know who plays what role in this situation. And then the third person comes into play, and now he comes in and he's like, buddy, we need to, and he's being logical, he's being upfront, maybe he has a good bond with the son, and so he can get a little more ground than she can, which then she could feel as more powerlessness, because I can't ever do anything. Why is it so easy for you? Because then again, that complicates the situation. So if she checks out and he has a different change in his facial expression because she walks out of the room, guess who notices that?
Yeah, the kid sees it.
Right. And that doesn't mean he can immediately internalize that and weaponize it, but he could be.
It's a data point. I'm seeing dad frustrated with mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's something about, if you're raised in homes that have any kind of volatility, and I don't mean off the charts volatility, I just mean moments where you can just, the house just feels different.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's something's up.
I mean, what house doesn't?
Every one of them. That's kind of the way I'm trying to paint this picture. Okay. The kids know. They figure it out because their survival depends on it. And so when mom is not feeling well, everybody knows. When dad's a little upset, everybody knows, right? And so it's just this kind of concept of, he is constantly seeing, how can I get her to whatever, rather than how is he interjecting and leading the situation with himself better? How's he leading himself? That's his goal. That's all he can do, because trying to do anything in regards to, I wish she would, immediately loses ground.
It loses, and maybe, well, you just said it, loses ground. It's going to potentially force her into it even more of her. And I don't know that heels in the ground is where it is, but if that's not where she is, it makes her back away even more.
Well, absolutely. If she doesn't really like conflict, which there's a lot of people that don't. I think majority of people don't want conflict. We want comfort. Mm-hmm. But the point is realizing I have to broaden my ability to handle conflict is where I can find the comfort. Mm-hmm. Because I learn the ability to handle it, not that I'm in a conflict-free environment.
And so being a partner that makes it feel safe to try and deal with it when I don't want to is...
Well, if he walked into a situation that starts to get a little more heated, and he reads her as she's ready to bolt, because there's signals that are being sent, or a body shift or a posture or a phrase or something, and he was just saying, honey, if you need to take a break, go ahead. I got this. I'll fill you in a little bit. Totally different approach to the situation.
That's a huge flip.
Yeah. And so it's an ability to recognize, how do you cultivate space to let her be who she is in this moment? Because when some of us face conflict, we do regress. We can crumble internally. We can go spaghetti brained. I can't get a thought together. Some of us have learned how to do it where I go quiet, because I know if I go open with it, it's going to turn vicious. And so from past experience, I realized I got to keep my mouth shut. I need to get out of this. And so we do. And then it's realizing I'm not addressing the situation better, but I'm starting to learn about me. And if you can see it as that, then you start figuring out a way to use each other's strengths to handle situations. You and I have had experiences with this with our kids, that on certain subjects, depending on which child talking about, we will decide consciously who's going to take the lead with them in that dialogue.
Yeah.
Because one of us can land a little easier with a certain kid on a certain topic than the other of us would.
And it could be in the moment, one of us is in a better spot than the other.
Exactly.
There have been some surprising times where usually one of us is better at dealing with that child in particular, but we're like, nope, tonight you got it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because whatever else is going on around us didn't allow the normally more level one to.
And that's where you start using each other as allies in the situations as it pertains to raising children, running a household, dealing with small businesses, whatever it might be. And not take judgment over the fact that I didn't handle that moment well at that time. And it's not an indictment. not like everything went catastrophically wrong. I just dropped the ball there. Okay.
Own it.
Own it. Step away. Regain composure. Regain perspective. Get my debrief. Like if he did that situation, hey, I got this. Let me handle this. And maybe we can't gain any ground with it, but I can adjust differently to it. Well, yeah, buddy, I understand you're upset about school. I totally get that. Because when I can name a fear or a hurt with somebody, I settle the whole scene down a little bit better, right? It's that ability to recognize somebody's really, really upset about something because they're scared. And you're like able to go, I get how this is scary. I totally understand that. And I just create space for that in that moment. That's all I need to do. We'll deal with the other stuff in a little bit. But we think for some reason as parents, we need a one fell swoop everything. Well, now that I got your attention, I got my list and you start rolling it out.
Oh my gosh, that's
you
me.
Go through everything rather than, no. How about I just take this moment because I'm trying to handle me better. And when I do that, then I can come back to things because I'm learning and creating a capacity to do this. And then I get a chance to start to collaborate with who my spouse actually is, with who my son actually is. Because how many times do we come into these scenes where I want to bring up a subject with a kid, or I know I've got an issue that we've got conflict around, most likely because history has shown that. But I have this hope in my mind that it's going to land different. And then when it doesn't, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm mortified. Rather than, hang on. What if I was to actually go in going, I know this probably isn't going to go well. This is my own self-talk. And so I'm not going to let that be the thing that derails me. I'm going to let it be, I know this is going to be rough for my wife. I know that she's going to have a little trouble hanging with me. And I just hope she will. And I'll deal with when she doesn't. It's okay. I'll handle that. I'll deal with that. I'll lead myself differently, which models something different, which then, to his last question, how do I keep this from spilling over into the other parts of our life, particularly sexually? Well, you don't keep it from spilling over, but you start to show yourself as a different person in the other aspects of your life, which can draw her to you because there's more steadiness.
Yeah, with that, the spillover can be a positive aspect as opposed to a negative aspect because of how you're handling yourself.
Exactly. And so this is just realizing that we don't need conflict or fewer conflict situations in life. We just need cleaner moments of defining ourselves and being engaged in those better.
Right. So in the extended content, that's where you're diving to, right? So This is more of it is hands-on in the extended content. How do you do that?
Right. What would this look like with the different points of balance, which is solid, flexible self, quiet mind, calm heart, grounded responding, and meaningful endurance is the four points of balance. And these are just all aspects that usually we're good at a couple of these and not so good at the others. So how do I shore up my weak points, magnify my strong ones, and make it more blended of all four? Right.
Yeah. So you want to speak to him and his wife and how he handles that. It's more like hands-on.
Right. So smr.fm/academy if you're not yet a member to be able to listen to the extended.